This is your daily reminder. God has not run out of mercy, not for you, not today. Welcome to the New Mercies Podcast. Welcome. Today is Monday, August the 17th. I am so thankful that you are here today. If you are new to the podcast, welcome. I am so thankful that you've tuned in today. We are starting a new series this coming week. We have a new series that we are in 1 John, the book of 1 John. I know some of you may be very thankful that we are moving out of the Old Testament. I hope that through the book of Hosea, you learned a lot and you saw a lot. We're going to be looking through the book of 1 John, the 5 chapters, these next 5 weeks. We're just going to do one chapter a week this past couple of weeks. As we've been looking through the book of Hosea, I know we've done several chapters at once, and I know that was a lot. So we are going to back off a little bit and just look at one chapter at a time. So our reading plan today, we are in 1 John chapter 1 today. That's what we're going to look at today in our journals. Then tomorrow we'll be in Psalm 36. Then we're looking into John, the Gospel of John chapter 1, then Isaiah 6, which is going to be a really fun one. I'm going to let loose on Thursday. And then we've got on Friday, we're going to look back at 1 John 1 again, and then into Psalm 32. The reason I'm telling you that is with this Hosea series that we were in, we didn't do like a recap day or a day that we repeated the text I would be preaching because I did so many in a row. So this week, here's why I'm telling you that. This week, we're going to look at 1 John 1 today. We're going to look at it again on Friday. So this episode today, I'm not going to look through the entire chapter of 1 John 1. It is 10 verses. It is very simple, very short, but it is packed with goodness. Now, here's the hard part for me, all right? I know I'm giving a lot of explanation, but we're starting a new series. The hard part is I went through a series in 1 John in 2024. So a couple of years ago, I went through a series. I titled it All In, and we went chapter by chapter through 1 John. And I absolutely loved that series. And so I gave a little bit of background. So if you were here at our church during that series, I'm going to say a couple of things to help set us up because the truth didn't change. The thoughts and maybe the application changed just a little bit with the season we were in, but the truth didn't change. So I do want to give you a little bit of background here of why John is writing this letter and what's going on. John is the Apostle John, the beloved disciple, the one that Jesus loved, as his gospel account says. John was one of the very first disciples called and the last one to die. He was the one that lived with Jesus the most. He was with him the most moments. He was also the one who was exiled onto the island of Patmos, where he had the revelation of Jesus, that he wrote down the book of Revelation. He was the man who wrote down the gospel account of the book of John. He's also the one that wrote these 3 letters, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. 1 John, obviously have 5 chapters. 2nd and 3rd John, very short. Now, all that to say, there's a lot in this. John is a great writer. We love the way John writes. We love the passion in which he writes. We love how he writes. But just a little background about what's going on here. John is in the city of Ephesus. This is towards the end of his life. He's in Ephesus, and he's writing this letter because there is some false teaching going on in the church. I started thinking about this. Imagine John, this great apostle. It would be like a modern day, like a Billy Graham type, like major pastor, preacher, church founder kind of guy. Imagine him just showing up to our church, right? If he shows up to our church, I'm going to tell you this. I'm putting this guy in charge of a Sunday school class, right? We're putting him as a small group leader. We're having him preach. We're bringing him in. We're going to have him preach regularly. He's going to be in a preaching rotation for us. We're going to put him in front of as many groups as possible, right? That's what's happened. He's shown up to Ephesus, and I can just imagine the way the church has received him there, right? This is one of the founders. Can you imagine one of the last guys to know Jesus personally and to see him experience all of his miracles? Powerful thing. So what's happened, because this is a little bit later in life, this is the 3rd generation of believers. Okay, the 3rd generation of believers, meaning these are the people that there was this 1st generation of believers that got the Holy Spirit, the power of the salvation of God, and then they pass it on to the next generation, and then they pass it on to the next generation. This is the 3rd generation that received the message of the gospel. And here's what goes on whenever there's something that takes place. One of my favorite commentators gives this explanation of what happens whenever you're 3 generations deep. Typically, the 1st generation has insane amount of conviction, right? Their conviction determines everything about their life. They say, I will not do this because my conviction has set in. What happens, the next generation of believers, the convictions turn into beliefs. So they are not as convicted, but they do still hold true to the beliefs. Well, what happens is to the third generation, those beliefs become opinions and other things are allowed to fit in. You may hear things like, well, my parents don't understand this because they don't live in the same culture that I live in. The times they lived in was different, right? That's kind of how we justify a slow watering down of the convictions, the truth. So John not taking it for what it is. He says, no, I'm going to address this. So let me tell you a little bit what's going on in the church. At this point, in Ephesus specifically, and then the surrounding churches, there's three different false ideas that are coming through. Those three false ideas about Jesus specifically. There is a group, there's all these different terms for this. I'm afraid I'm going to mispronounce it, so I apologize. I wrote them down and I tried to write them down phonetically so that I could say it better. So there's docetism. Docetism is believing that Jesus was not actually human, that Jesus was just divine, and that his pain and suffering and all that was really more illustrative and really more something symbolic. But Jesus wasn't fully human. He was fully divine, but not fully human. So he didn't have flesh and blood, and he was just this idea of the God that kind of showed up and sort of walked around and did some things, but wasn't fully human. There's the Ebionites, which were the people that believed that Jesus was not fully God. He was just human. What they believed was they thought that Jesus was the perfect Jewish man who obeyed all the laws, and because of that was a worthy sacrifice. But they didn't believe he was God's son. They didn't believe he was God. So there was that issue. Now, I'm saying this, Docetism, all of these isms and all these belief systems didn't actually appear till later, but this is where it first got its feet. This is where they first began. And then there was the Cerinthianism that was the belief that the two natures of God, of Jesus, were not true together, the divine and the human. So the reason I'm telling you that, we understand more about 1 John whenever we know the attacks that are happening within the church. There are people today that say Jesus was a good teacher, but he wasn't God. That's still going on today. There's people that say, oh, well, he was divine in nature, but he couldn't relate to us as a human, right? That still goes on today. It's still active today. So here's what I want to do. I want to jump right in and talk about this for just a second, because here's how John begins this letter. This is awesome. In verse 1, he says, he takes us back to the very beginning. That which was from the beginning is what he says. He's like, let's go back to Genesis. It feels very Genesis 1. It feels very John 1. Talking about the Word was with God. He was God. He's in the very beginning. This was going on in the beginning. He says that means he's eternally divine, right? Then he says that which we have seen and heard and we've touched. We've seen. He gets very, very physical. Why? He has just defeated these two false ideas, right? These two false teachings. He wasn't fully divine. He wasn't fully human. And here's what John says. In the beginning, Jesus was physical, and he is here, and we touched him, and we saw him, we heard him. All of the physical attributes, all of the eternal nature, he nails it in one verse. I love it. This is an absolute beautiful way the Holy Spirit is addressing the problems in the church. His truth we have heard and seen and touched. So the Docetism, wrong, can't believe it. It's not true. The eternal nature, the Ebionites, wrong. The way it's not going to work. He goes in very, very physical because he's dealing with the false teachers. That's what he's dealing with. Third generation of believers. Every third generation, can I tell you this? Every third generation needs a fresh touch. Every third generation needs a new awakening. Every one of them. It happens in all of us. My dad was one of the most convicted men in the world. He had such strong convictions. And here's what happens. I have begged God to give me those type of convictions, because those convictions have become beliefs in me. I stand firm in the beliefs that I stand on. But there is a point where I got to say, Lord, I need you to make this a much stronger line in my heart, because I don't want the next generation to be deluded again. I don't want generations that come are deluded. I want them to have the same convictions that I have. I want them to have the same convictions my father had. And I don't mean the exact same convictions. What I'm saying is as strong convictions that say this is going to determine where my life goes. That's what I want. Every third generation needs a new, fresh awakening. Be praying for that third generation. Into verse 3, we see Christ brings us into fellowship. This is way way more than just we understand the correct knowledge about Jesus, and then because it's the correct knowledge about Jesus in the first couple verses, then we get into why this matters. He brings us into fellowship with him. Christianity isn't just figuring out the right information about Jesus. That's part of what was going on in the church, right? These false teachers come in and you got these people say, I'm going to debate you to make sure that we know who's right. And here's what John says. Here's the truth, but let me tell you why this matters. Jesus, this Christ that I proclaim, this Jesus that is in the Bible, this Jesus that the Old Testament spoke about, that the New Testament is now revealing, that this is the person that fulfilled every single prophecy. Every single thing that was said about the Messiah has been fulfilled in this one person of Jesus. He is the reason he matters to us so much is because he brings us into fellowship. When you know this Jesus, it's not just getting the right answers on a test, it's being in fellowship with the one. These truths bring us into what's called koinonia. Koinonia is the word for fellowship here, and it is the word that we find in the book of Acts for the fellowship of the believers. This word koinonia is really, really beautiful. I'm going to be explaining more of this on Sunday, Lord willing, if he allows me to live that long and I get to preach. But this word koinonia is this really intimate, intense word that means not just fellowship, it means not just participation, not just communion, but like even shared life. Like the life that you live, I get to live with you. And this is more than just the life that we get to live together. This is the life that we get to live with God. Because of Jesus. That's where he's going with this. We have, and here's how he explains this. We encountered him, we then proclaimed him, you then received him, and then we share life together and with God. That's how this plays out. That's how this works. We share life together with the Father and the Son. Verse number 5, God is light. It is great. He doesn't just have light. He doesn't just give light. He is light. No darkness in him at all. The false teachers were claiming, here's another thing the false teachers were claiming. False teachers drive me crazy. It drove the Lord crazy. False teachers, they claim this secret knowledge. You have to go to them in order to get the full understanding of this God. There's secret, hidden knowledge that you need to get through the false teachers. That's what you need to go find. And John says, no, God is light. He exposes everything. So here's what he says. As they say this, we got this secret knowledge. You have to come to us and understand this. So John says, okay, then, you know what? Let's, instead of trying to figure out the secret knowledge, let's just look at your life and see what gets exposed. Let's just go and look and see. Let's look at your walk, right? Verses 6 and 7 talk about the life that we live must match the faith that we claim. That's what needs to happen. If we say, those words are in here a few times. And notice he doesn't say, I love how it says in verse number 6, if we say we have fellowship with him, but while we walk in the darkness, he doesn't say, if we say we have fellowship with him and then we sin. He says, if we say we have fellowship with him and we walk in the darkness. I want to make sure and clarify something for you real quick. Walking in the darkness means direction and pattern and practice. That's what he's talking about. He's not saying if you slip up and fail and you sin, then you're a liar. What he's saying is whenever you make a direct decision that this is the path that I am on, and it is a path of darkness, it's a path of brokenness, it's a path of rejection and rebellion against God, that's the problem. It's not, if you say that you have fellowship with God, but you've sinned, if you mess up, then you're obviously lying. No. He says, but if you walk in the darkness, walking in the darkness is a choice. It is a choice that you make. You could choose not to turn the light on. Here's what I want to do today as we wrap up. I've been rambling on a little bit long. Sorry. Not sorry. You could turn it off anytime you want. You chose not to turn it off yet. Here's what it says. I broke it up into a couple of different little things like we've tried to do this last series. Verses 1 through 4, I titled Encounter the Real Christ. Encounter the Real Christ. Verse number 5, Know the Holy God. Verse number 6 and 7, Walk in the light. Really great passage. Verse number 8, Acknowledge your sin. I know we didn't talk about that one. We'll talk about it a little bit more on Friday. Verse number 9, Confess your sin. So acknowledge your sin, then confess your sin. And verse number 10, Trust God's verdict. It's not about you and your decisions and all that. Trust what God is doing and what he is saying. Hope and pray you read 1 John 1 today. Maybe read a couple times since it's a little bit short. See what the Lord would have you to know and understand about his nature, his character, who he is. And know this, do not believe a false teacher that will try to tell you that Jesus isn't fully God and fully man. How does it work? I don't know for sure. I just know it's true. Don't teach anything otherwise. 1 John chapter 1, go see what the Lord would have you to know.